this is Soda's Place. Returning viewers of the channel may notice some key differences between this video and the last video. For starters, there are more characters, although some of them have already been on the channel before. This will be a more in-depth explanation of said characters and an introduction of a new character. Also, I've upgraded a little bit. It's nice to finally have a design Soda who doesn't... Soda? Sona, who doesn't look totally unlike me. Anyway, I'm really excited to show you guys what I've been up to, so let's go ahead and move on to the first design. So, if you've watched my last video, you probably remember Nova, the space-haired yellow alien with an award-losing smile. Well, she's actually one of the two main antagonists of her story, which hasn't really been given an official name yet. I've just been calling the world the 5 realms, because there's 5 realms, which I will probably draw out a map for and go into a bigger explanation in another video, but that's for future Soda to deal with. She has a very complex backstory. She grew up as a princess in a kingdom, and then through a series of very unfortunate events, she ended up being banished to another realm with no memory of who she was before. Not that, like, they took her memories, but that she probably hit her head really, really hard and just brain damaged it out. But what I like most about Nova and her design is that she seems not so threatening. She's always wearing big poofy gowns with tight laced corsets and veils, and she looks very modest, but it's mostly just because that's what feels normal to her. She grew up in a kingdom with a very Tudor-inspired fashion, so she's used to the veils and the corsets and the big poofy sleeves and all of that stuff. It feels almost like natural for her, even though the kingdom she does end up living in through her adult life is not like that. They don't really do big poofy dresses. It's more, medieval clothing almost, where it more so hugs the frame, but not very tightly, you know? But anyway, Nova comes from a land where her species are energy-based. You know how we're carbon-based? They're energy-based. And don't ask me to explain, that's just, I don't really know how to explain it, that's just the way it is. But that means that not only can her species do magic, but they also don't have a singular form set in stone. I'm not saying that she can, like, shapeshift or something, but, like, her features aren't exactly up to DNA. Her hair and her skin and that kind of thing can change. You know, she wasn't born with space hair, which I know you can't see in this drawing I've done because I gave her the veil, but I'd like to imagine that the space hair was something that she gained during her time in Phalium, which is the land she was banished to. Originally, she had blue hair as a child, and a lot of her story is her slowly changing as she becomes a worse and worse person out of desperation. But that's Nova, and now we're gonna move on to the next villain. Where to begin with Pan? I just hate this guy so much, and he's just such a sly bastard. Like, the way his backstory goes is that, you know, he wasn't always Pan. He used to be an elf named Faerith, who was of Satyr descent. I will lead with that, but for the most part, just a normal elf, right? Who went around and didn't want to take... My dog just pushed the door open. Sorry if you could hear that. She's still doing it. Anyway, he didn't want to settle down, so he went around the Isles, because he lived in Phalium, there's 7 Isles, and just moved from place to place so that he wouldn't have to settle down. But eventually he meets this girl, Dinah, and they get together, and then she ends up pregnant, and he runs off. He's terrified. He's scared of commitment. So he leaves her with that baby, and she has to deal with it, and eventually he feels so guilty, he ends up accidentally sacrificing himself to the trickster god. So Faerith is no more. Pan is the only thing left. And Pan is such an ass. I just don't like him. He's very tricky and slimy and ugh. But that's also what I like about him. He makes for a good antagonist because he's not misunderstood. There is nothing to understand about Pan. He is evil, just plain and simple. He has no motivations other than self-preservation. And you gotta respect the hustle. I mean, I feel like a lot of villains nowadays are they try to write them as morally gray, which then just comes across as you're supposed to pity them. I watched the newer Peter Pan remake, the live-action one by Disney, and the way they tried to humanize Hook was it just undermined the whole point of the story, which was, well, at least the point that I got out of the original animated movie, which was, neither Hook or Peter Pan are good characters. They're not, you don't want to end up like either one of them. You don't want to end up a miserable grown-up or someone that's immature forever. You gotta find a good middle ground. But back to Pan, I like him as a character because there's nothing to pity. There's nothing to feel bad for. You don't have to feel bad for rooting for this character to lose. You're supposed to want them to lose. And, that's what I like, because I don't like anything about him. So, if anyone ever tells you otherwise, this is the author's intent. You are absolutely 100% supposed to hate that guy. But he's also supposed to be a pretty boy, because, of course, not all monsters look like them, which, personally, I don't find him attractive, but I know at least 2 people do. So, that's something. And I mean people in real life, not, characters, But Pan, he is, the slimiest you can get. And the way I came up with this character, actually, was I was watching Once Upon a Time, because I love that show, and the idea of an evil Peter Pan was so interesting to me that I was like, okay, I can play with this. And obviously Pan from Greek mythology, the god of nature, I believe it was, who is a satyr with a panpipe, which you don't see it, but he has a panpipe as one of his main things. And obviously I had to make a pirate counterpart, so Dinah is the Captain Hook to his Peter Pan, if they were doomed yaoi, I guess. But anyway, that's it for Pan. And now we'll be moving on to our last but not least character. The bounty hunter is a very interesting character to me because honestly, there's not a lot to him. He's just a mysterious bounty hunter that would be the main antagonist for the middle of the trilogy, where, Nova's desperate. She wants to find those meddling kids, and she sends this bounty hunter to go find them because he is known across the realms as being the best of the best. There really is nothing more to it. There's no big backstory, no big plot twists revealing who he is. He's just a bounty hunter. But I will say, for his design, it took me so long to find a good outfit for him. I just was struggling so hard. Armor is like the worst thing in the world for me to draw, which if you saw my Instagram post of my Chris Dreamer drawing that I did, you're probably thinking like, what are you talking about? But it takes so long for me to draw this stuff. It's like almost impossible for me to get it right and look the way I want it to. And I think the pose also made it tricky. I have no idea what's going on with his other hand, I'll be honest. I didn't know what to do for it, so I just kind of made it stick out. Because I was looking at a reference photo of this woman in armor with a big sword. Because, hell yeah. But that was the way her arm was. I was like, okay, whatever. But, and these are just, like, cool design drawings anyway. I'm not entirely happy with all of them. But, you know, it got to a point where I couldn't keep messing around with them. I had to finish them eventually. And I think it does show off the lighting a lot more than the outfit. But, you know, I feel like that's cool. And I love his fire sword. Like, that is the coolest part of his character, is his big fire sword. Which took me a while to come up with an idea for. And then I remembered, I thought about, like, blacksmithing, of, like, heating up the metal and hammering it out and thinking, oh, red hot sword, that'd look awesome. But, you know. And honestly, initially, this character was not even my idea. It came from someone that I knew a couple years ago that was like, hey, you should add a bounty hunter character with, like, a fire sword and a bird mask stuff to your thing. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And I drew it out. And, you know, I looked back at the design, and I didn't quite like it. I wanted to make him look more imposing, I guess. And definitely change the helmet, the bird helmet. At first, it was just a mask, and I thought that didn't look serious enough, so I tried to give him, like, a bird-shaped helmet. Like, the top is the beak, and then the bottom jaw part is the bottom jaw of the beak. I don't know how well it comes across, but, you know. I also thought that since he's handling fire, he should have some flame retardant gear. You know, he's got a lot of padding in his outfit. He only has a few metal pieces, and they're on top of padded stuff. Because, you know, the metal will heat up if you're using fire, and that would burn, and that would suck. So he's got flame retardant, like, armor. It's like fabric. It's fabric. It's all textile stuff. And his color scheme, I know it's hard to see, is red and black. The apron thing is red, and his gloves are red, and part of the fabric is red. The rest of it is dark gray, and his armor is black, because when I think of an evil knight, I think of the Black Knight from, like, Arthurian legend, and, well, really from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. But that's just because I did Spam-A-Lot for a high school production my junior year, so, you know, I think of Spam-A-Lot a lot when I'm thinking of costume designs for my characters. I won't even lie. I love that production. Which, it won't surprise you to know that I was in costumes in high school for theater. My last 2 years, I did the costumes for the shows. But, anyway, moving on, back to topic. He would have keys to travel between realms, which I will go over in another video when I do explain the realms. But basically, too long, didn't read. There are gateways to realms between realms that you need a key to activate, which is like a gemstone, but it's a very magical gemstone, which are very hard to get. They're very rare. And I'd like to imagine that the bounty hunter has one for each realm, which is why he's so widely known as being good for every job. Also, he's just so cool. He has a lot of weak points, but honestly, I feel like that makes him scarier because he knows nobody would try it. Anyway, that's the bounty hunter, and let's see how these all came together. And with that, we are done with the 3 villains of the 5 realms. Thank you so much for watching if you've made it this far. It really means the world to me. If you have any questions or any suggestions or anything, feel free to leave a comment. It's always appreciated when people comment. I do read everyone. I read every comment. If you're drawing along with me, feel free to tell me about your characters. I'd love to hear about it. And if you want to see more of my characters, I post on Instagram and TikTok at Soda's Place. You can find me there. Or, I guess Blue Sky and Tumblr as well, though I don't post there as often as I do on TikTok and Instagram. But yeah, I guess that's it. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.